Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of June the 10th till 16th, 2024. Boy, are we ahead of a very intense week, and this is where these energies, even though they are without a shadow of a doubt, oriented, focused on truth and truth seeking, interpreting our perceptions in the most correct way. But when I say correct, uh, considering who it is that we are, considering the deep subjectivity of our being. I know that this is slightly dichotomous, what I'm saying, but this is what the energy asks of us, to make sense even from dichotomy and to find a really stable, good, almost wise balance between the contradictory nature of the Piscean energies and of the Gemini energies. Now, even though, as signs they square each other, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are always in conflict. The square means that if you harness wisdom and discipline and everything that is required for who it is that you are personally, not maybe not generally, it this energy actually tells us that in sometimes in life, in certain cases, situations, there isn't like a formula that can be like in chemistry. When certain substance meets another substance in certain ideal conditions, the chemical reaction is guaranteed to take place always without fail because the conditions are being met. Now, in a quantum reality, things are very different. And this is where we are experiencing, perhaps for the first time in a very stark, real way that we just cannot shake off, that, oh, maybe, my mind is a bit way too open, or my imagination is way too act. Yes, absolutely. Both of these factors are true. Imagination, Pisces, Saturn in it, anoretic Neptune in it. Like anoretic Neptune in its home sign of Pisces, all of us, even people who don't have in their charts natally, uh, in normal conditions, a lot of water energy. This is where maybe their beings is a bit like a desert, and that is not like an insult. Scorpions, cactuses, some of the most advanced creatures thrive in deserts. So desert is just like someone's normal habitat in that sense. But even deserts are being deluged, flooded by this Neptunian water. Now, what does this mean? Maybe let me give the best possible scenarios first of all. Emotion. And when I say emotion, not just like an overflow of emotion, but this overflow has a purpose to wash away things, like, as an analogy, visualize like a big calcium or sand deposit. The deluge has to wash that away. And that is where it frees the past. It dissolves it. It frees you. It's almost like, from a symbolic spiritual perspective, like a confession. You let it out and you get forgiveness. The energy leaves you, but it's overwhelming. But this can also represent the deluge of the spirit. Maybe you are carried away by the spirit. Reality seems like it's just a big lucid dream. That is also something really positive. It's not all that real, yet it is all that real, but it's not real in the sense that you know that you cannot touch it. You know that even if you see it, it's like a hologram. You feel it, but it's not all that earthly. And you know that it's, as I said, carrying you somewhere, and it's gonna be real once you're carried there, once you get to the destination. But right now, it's just a journey. And it is a journey because this energetic Neptune is going to stay with us until March 2025, if I'm not mistaken, and even beyond. So it's important, you know, it's very, very important. And also, what is artistic creation, song, music. However, this can get, as I said, when we're deluged by it, it may be so alive inside our beings in mind, heart, soul, but we cannot let it out yet. It's almost like an underground geyser that just doesn't have the necessary strength to shoot up from the earth yet. But as I said, this is a period. So, but at the same time, this can be love, compassion, magic, the best of the best that Neptune has to offer, where the divine is, it feels like it's almost very personally in your life, like a guest, like someone, like almost like a real person you can count on. That's also one of the most, but all of this, as wonderful as it is, we know that we cannot, how should I say, grasp it yet. We cannot have a grip on it yet. It's not 100% real. However, Saturn, the reality making principle, is also in Pisces, going on Neptune's tracks in 2025. This is complicated because this is not just one moment. So let me excuse my imperfection, but let's just say 2025 they will meet. In Aries, yes, absolutely, but they will be also conjunct both in Aries and Pisces, because both of them will be so close to one another that it's like cusp energy, really. So you see how Saturn makes it real. As it goes along, as we get closer to that 2025, 2026, into 2026, this is the best way to say it. It gets real, more and more and more and more and more real. Of course, that realness will have certain culmination points. For example, this September Pisces eclipse, then a lot of culmination moments in 2025. But even when Saturn and Neptune go retrograde this year. So anyway, whatever is deluging your life, but as I said, either emotion, ether, dreams, fantasy, desires, mysticism, sometimes even excessive psychological energy, loneliness, sadness, melancholy. You cannot help it, but you live in the past. Or you cannot help it, but you live anywhere except not the present moment and this reality. And you cannot help it. Escapism. But then there is the really the lowest expression, where I'm so sorry to even say this, but I have to say it, alcoholism. This is the moment when alcoholism gets very dangerous because it dissolves the body. It starts dissolving the physical body, energetic Neptune. Moving on, lies, delusion, but delusion in any way, shape, and form. The grandest delusion, religion's doctrine. Saturn is in Pisces. That means it's telling us, Saturn, the rules, the stability, the principle guidelines, basically the juice of all. Saturn in a religion, the ritual, the doctrine, the theology, all of it. Yeah, it's Jupiter, but also Saturn, because Jupiter is nothing if Saturn doesn't enforce it. So it's also Saturn, let's say, in a spiritual and faith-based sign as Pisces. But because it's in Pisces, Saturn is also dissolving. So it's telling that faith and the way spirit operates tends to freedom and not to have a shape and form more than to have a shape and form. It needs a bit of shape and form. It needs it because we're earthly beings, Taurus and all that, Uranus and Taurus. So it needs a bit, but it cannot be restrictive of the highest octave of expression of Neptune, which is the freedom of the spirit and the ether. So I'm so sorry to start the horoscope with this big mumbo jumbo of alchemy, spirituality, and stuff, and philosophy, but we need to understand what the sky wants from us because it's gonna be deeply confusing, but also deeply clarifying at the same time. And this must not drive us into insanity. You know, we must really understand that it's supposed to be like that. What our job is to distill it, to make it our own, to find our own, yes, subjective truth in all of this big cocktail of energies. So Neptune and Heretic, the again the lowest expression, depression, sadness, but the bad kind. And I'm so sorry to say this, suicidal tendencies, but that is where it's the devil. The devil in a philosophical sense is very much Neptune as well. It's very much Pisces as well. The duality of Pisces. One is the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, but the other one is the anti of that. You know, one is the Christ consciousness, but the same, how should I say, sphere of Pisces hosts the opposite of this, the anti-Christ consciousness. But Saturn, that's Saturn's job right now in Pisces. Saturn is there every 30, 33 years or so, no problem. But its job was never more crucial than it is now. Why? Because it has to distill all of this, separate, keep the boundaries between the two, because the two may not mix. And they do mix right now. Let me give you the keyword. Pluto, Hades, right? Aquarius, in the internet. They're mixed together. Saturn separates it. How? It gives us the discernment, deep, instinctually included, to feel, know, be able to know one way or another. Why not even mentally, Gemini energy? What is evil and what is genuinely not evil? You know what I mean? And Neptune and Heretic, the illusion, the lie, deception, collectively speaking, everything is a lie. And this is literal right now. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not conspiracy theorist at all. But we just know that everything is a lie. The war, there is a physical part of the war, but the larger scale is the informational, psychological one. Let's admit this. And this week, exactly this is the star of the show. So let us get into the horoscope. Now that we understand that everything is an illusion, however, we are asked to find, even within that non-real, our own version of the truth and to allow it to crystallize Saturn. Now, all through the week, Saturn will square the sun at the beginning of the week. Again, this is the reality check moment. But at the same time, we must not allow Saturn to have the upper hand, to cut our wings. Neither of us may allow the sun very close to Mercury, a rational sun, to cut our wings. We must find a way for information and the power of our own intellect, intelligence, logic, and communication and self-expression, but also the unseen, the invisible, the irrational part of us, the unconscious, to be good bedfellows, to support one another, to be friends with one another. You know, there are certain things as situationships. When the situation makes two unusual souls, people, minds, whatever, good bedfellows or more. And it's like the situation is the core of all, because other like a quincunx, otherwise the two elements would have never met. This can even occur internally speaking when we, as I said, make good bedfellows out of two usually opposites. But when there is a high purpose, the opposites can very well work together. Just like the universe is built that way. The universe has, just like astrology, every sign has an opposite sign. In the universe, every element or every aspect of it, every even avatar of it will have an opposite. Just like in Judo-Christian magic, every archangel has an opposite, and really they are like the two sides of the same coin. Something that exists in the divine, the highest divine planes will also have a challenger to that, just like our conscious and unconscious. But in the sake of divine harmony and existence, sorry, to exist in a certain kind of balance, the two have to keep their part of reality together. So many times they have to be good bedfellows, like it or not. You know what I mean? Like, let me give you a Gemini Sagittarian axis. Very different. But the information knowledge factor, regardless if in a Mercurial or Jupiterian way, is the core of that sign. So yeah, this week we need every ounce of this inner discipline, and exactly to make good bedfellows with the mind and the unconscious part of us, or the mind or the deeper emotional part of us, because that is the key to navigate safely but also successfully through these energies. So Saturn conjunct the sun needs that balance, self-discipline Saturn, but also sufficient freedom. Venus also squaring Saturn still at the beginning of the week. She is already in the third Uranian decan of Gemini. So the freedom of heart, freedom of love, freedom of values, freedom of anything Venusian is going to be definitely the theme. But how does the Saturn square? My freedom should not really be a restriction to another person's or being's or whatever's freedom. Put this into context in any way, shape, and form, even in the most practical ways. Let me give you an example. Saturn in Pisces, free food samples. The freedom and the humanitarian part of it is Pisces, and Saturn, let's do a good deed. Let's make the embodiment. Gemini squaring Venus, well, I'm only going to take one or two pieces to really sample it. I'm not going to take the whole tray, even if I could do it, even if I could pull it off. This is such a really good example of how to use this energy. And because the sun is sandwiched between Venus and Mercury, the sun just illuminates really both the heart and the value, the love dimension Venus, but also the mental, intellectual. So this, I'm not even going to separate Mercury's, the sun's, and Venus's square with Saturn, because they are in one group. So this energy is mixed. It's not just about Venus, or it's not just about Mercury. You cannot separate it. It's a little bit mix of all three. So yes, sun, ego, the mind catches the ego at work and disciplines it. Usually very, very good decisions, choices, options are born out of this energy. And yes, making choices either in the immediate present or the future, or remember, Both Saturn and Neptune are kind of close to retrograding. They're not going to move all that much anymore, a few minutes only. So that means they are almost at a standstill. And because they're big planets, I'm not exaggerating, even if this is a bit early to call it, but they're almost at a standstill. So maybe the retrogradation will further work on these options, choices that we're called to at least think about right now, because that's Saturn. Before you commit to it, think about it, judge it, evaluate. When I say judge it, not in a bad sense, the judgmental sense, but evaluate it, for what it truly is. So this week is going to be so important, business wise, job wise, career wise, friendship wise, project wise, anything that has to do with collaboration with other people, anything with communication, sharing information, speaking your truth, saying your needs, saying your wants, saying your desires, but saying it in a balanced way. Because a square, this, if you're not truly your wisest self, then of course you're gonna get it wrong. No problem. The retrogrades, remember, you will get it right during the retrogrades. But if you're your wisest self, then you really make the optimal of this energy, knowing yourself deeply. Gemini, knowing others, knowing me, knowing you. You know what? And this is literal in this week. Okay, so enough with the philosophy. Let's get to what really matters. So I'm going to just move a day ahead because we will see that energy as clear as possible. Mars squaring Pluto. Mars freshly entered the sign of Taurus. Now, on one hand, besides the philosophy, this may mean volcanic or anything that has to do with flames, magma, and the movement of the earth. Because Uranus is at one end of Taurus, Mars is at the beginning. You get what I mean. One end and the other end. So this is where the energy, even physically, electromagnetically, the Earth's core is going to be very activated. So there's that part. Now, the other part, Mars is not comfortable in Taurus because Taurus is slow. Again, the analogy of the magma. Magma hot and totally the element of fire besides the element of earth, but it still cannot be compared to a forest fire or lightning because that's fast, that just burns with great intensity. Magma doesn't burn in that sense, and when it settles down, it's permanent. It becomes like a rock formation. That's like Mars and Taurus and how it works. Even financially speaking, Taurus find value, love, senses, physical body, agriculture, uh, currency, banking, World Bank. What politicians do with money, did with money even, because Pluto's retrograde. So yes, Pluto square Pluto, Mars square Pluto. Now, Mars was just very, very freshly in his home sign of Aries. So, okay, it's not, Taurus has not slowed it down significantly yet because it's at the beginning degrees, at 1 degree of Taurus. So it still has a good drive and momentum and heat. This is when the magma shoots from the earth. You know, that part of the magma flow, when it shoots up from the earth. So it's dynamic. So World Bank, power of the people, Pluto and Aquarius, freedom, liberty, everyone counts, power of masses, power of majority, the change, Mars in Taurus, let's change it around. Mars is activating everything that Mercury, Sun, Venus did in Taurus, everything that Jupiter did in Taurus. And in a larger sense, from 2018, everything that Uranus did in Taurus. So we will see this. But at the same time, war, explosions. When Mars last squared Pluto, if I am not mistaken, it was October last year, or sorry, November rain last year. So things can get really, really, really scary and intense, but fortunately, it won't last all that long, but does it have to? So let's leave it at that. There is going to be a lot of activity. On the other hand, Venus and the Sun and Mercury, towards the very end of the week, will start sextiling Aries. Aries will activate the rebellious part, and the third decan of Gemini is just as rebellious in its own way as Aquarius. And that also means that Pluto will hold a square and a half, a sesqui-square with Pluto. What I said earlier, freedom. Saturn squaring Mercury. I will show you the exact moment just in a bit. Restriction of freedom of speech. You're not allowed to say certain things, speak about certain topics. Gemini, social media. This can very well include the internet being cut off as well. Pisces because of religious/moral reasons, or Pisces the past because of the past. So there is going to be a lot of, anoretic Neptune. You lie, no, you lie. But this is where everyone lies. Everything is a lie. History is a lie. If everything is a lie, then what are our chances to trust what we want to believe? And this is when reality actually gets to that. In a literal sense, Neptune dissolves everything. Neptune is at the very, very, very end degree and almost the end minutes of the zodiac. This is important. This is deep. And we never knew Neptune in such a way. We're learning what Neptune is as we speak as astrologers. Okay, enough about Neptune. So the heat is going to be on this 11th of June. Very much. In any way, shape, and form, financially, and even individually speaking. So, individually speaking, we're not out of the woods. Anger. Taurus is one of the angriest earth signs, as in, it can pull off at certain moments of their life very Aries type of actions. A Taurus, esoterically speaking, is ruled by Volcanus, volcano, literally. You know what I mean? So Taurus is like, okay, it's a tranquil, beautiful, fertile earth, but once every blue moon, when Taurus's nerves are extended to the max, it explodes. Boom. Taurus, let's not forget, is like the bull, red flag bull. That's also very much Taurus. And I'm not speaking about necessarily Taurus sun sign people. I'm speaking about everyone has this Taurus energy in their charts and it might detonate. Emotionally, the past let's say it's 12th house. Oh, I'm out of the woods. It's going to be just a bit of sadness, right? You cannot imagine how the past can suddenly knock on your door. And it might not even be a tragic event, but it deluged you. You are on the floor. Your mind is blown. Whatever that may mean. Or speaking about manifestation, sometimes what are the chances and it happens? And you are stunned, literally. Your being is stunned. You're It's almost like your being contracts and you're just the soul for a few days and weeks. even regardless of what happens, if it comes with that karmic intensity, it might be part of the picture, because Mercury sesquiquadrate Pluto, it's shocking. It can be shocking. News, information, especially its home in Gemini, getting close to its conjunction with the sun, prophetic, Apollo aspect, the Mercury burning up in the heart of the sun, combust in Gemini, but it's the ruler of all of this. So Mercury has a crown on his head, so Mercury pulls strings in the background. Mercury is also like Loki, the trickster. So, but sometimes the trick is played on the trickster, you know what, thieves and etc. etc. So it's not really a good week to steal. You're empowered by the Aries sextile, for example. It gives you a bit of strength, but don't do it under this Saturn. Don't do it. So when lies just reveal themselves for what they are, that's also karmically part of this picture. And also, this Gemini planets sextile Chiron all throughout the week. This can be profoundly healing, because healing words, your attitude, communication, acceptance, tolerance, bro, sis, the genuine brother sister attitude can be so healing for another person, can be energizing in the best possible sense. So this is also a season when bromances are gonna be definitely born. No, some karmic alliances, let's see, like soulmates, are not gonna be romantic. They're gonna be like bromance. Absolutely, that's one of the oldest types of relationships in the world. And this is where it doesn't go to just the male element, sisterhoods. But sisterhoods are so natural part of our lives that they're like not even paid attention to. But so are brotherhoods, even though in this day and age that doesn't work necessarily the way it used to in the past. But this is when they're being born under this energy. However, you can imagine that with the Mars Pluto square, the necessity, the intensity, the crisis, the something just happens. Like, let me give you an example, even though it's a bit, I shouldn't. Violence. It doesn't necessarily have to be the criminal type of violence. You're attacked by a angry dog. A total stranger, a bro, comes to your rescue. There it is. The bromance is born there and then. Nature, Taurus, wild animal, aggression. You see? But put this into any kind of someone comes to your rescue because you're in the deep. It doesn't have to be a doomy and gloomy and psychological deep. You have a breakdown, car breakdown. Someone comes to your rescue. Car, Gemini, travel, Mercury home in Gemini, Venus, important travel. So you see how this energy can play out in so very many different ways. So let's move on to the 13th now. Where we can see the Sun and Mercury sextiling Chiron, Venus sextiling Aries. So a very, very energetic day. Good for healing, absolutely, but let's remember Aries, sovereignty, my right, my life, basically, my dreams, my hopes, my heart, my desires. So this is going to be quite an intense day without a shadow of a doubt. And what I haven't mentioned, but it's so important, this week still, we will get the last part of the Pluto Jupiter trine. justice, right, anything that has to do with courts of justice, communication in a small expression in our personal lives or in a collective expression, large expression, international courts of justice, things are going to be ongoing. So, yeah. And whatever happens, even individually in courts of justice, Jupiter will trine at one moment the South Node in Libra, sign of justice. And Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, also sign related to justice. So it's a very important period for all of that. And if it has already taken place in your life legally, let's say, now is the period when it becomes executory, like it becomes real. It influences your life in a real sense. But Venus sextile Aries, let me show you Aries for a bit. So Venus sextile Aries, again, situationships. Aries can represent a certain kind of chaos. An archetype in any way, romantically, sensually, co-worker, contractually, in a situation, another person, an archetype that you don't usually connect with, impress you so much that your heart opens to them. But if this is sensual and you're in a committed relationship, be careful, because a sextile is what you make with it. It will definitely be interesting and good now, but remember, secrets are gonna pop out. And this about secrets, Saturn conjunct Nessus. Nessus is a centaur asteroid. It Nessus, if I'm not mistaken, was the son of Ixion. So just as lawless as his father. Things are revealed for what they are. Traitors, people who backstab, toxic people are visible, clear as daylight in this period of time. Visible to one something within us. Instinct, mind, heart, eyes, life experience, they are visible. Something within us just knows. So, Aries, sextile Venus. So it is what we make of it, but our words are attractive very, very much. Um, let's move on to the 14th when we have the Sun, Mercury, Kazimi. So this, as I said, this is one of those aspects which is so good for clarity. Basically, either the epiphany, figuring it out, having the data, the information, even if reality itself, the everything around us is in the fog, the mist, everything's a lie. Everything's illusion. It doesn't matter, because this Mercury conjunct the Sun gives us our own inner sense of logic and truth. It doesn't matter as long as within ourselves we are not all that much lost. We feel it, we know it. That's more than enough. This is so good for it. And communication, and to change the tone, to change our options, to change our minds, to change our preferences, to see things for what they are, but in the sense that matters to us, even if it's subject to Jupiter and Gemini. So this is a good energy, let's say. Very, very good. And they sextile Aries. So very good. Anything that means initiation, bravery. Let's do it. Let's speak it out. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to express myself. I'm going to say things for what they truly are. Of course, if this is used in an aggressive way, Aries and Eris and Chiron can represent of course, it's going to wound. But I hope that everyone is wise enough not to do that. And finally, oh, and Jupiter starts a semi-sextile with Mars. This is a complicated energy because, as I said, this frustrates Mars and Taurus even more. But this is, let me give you like how this can feel, because a semi-sextile is where two energies have to get along, but there's a lot of tension between them. Quick news, overwhelming communication, but due to your time and the energy and what you can do, you can only take one at a time. Mars and Taurus. You I don't think I need to explain for overwhelming. This can feel very, very overwhelming. Mars and Taurus is like, I'm just one man. I'm just one person. I can only handle one at a time, so be patient. But it's stressful, stressing and irritating, and yeah. And finally, towards the very end of the week, well, this is when Venus and Mercury are already holding their square with Neptune. The good part is that, remember the Saturn squares, that all three of these planets, but right now just Mercury and Venus, speaking about just Mercury and Venus, remember the square they held with Saturn. That square, the reality check, the let's see in which degree something is true for me, etc., etc., truth and not truth, information, but also feeling, what I said earlier. That helps us use this Neptune square the best way possible. Like the Neptune square, let me give you an example how it can be really good. You really, really were disciplined under the Saturn squares. And you didn't allow wishful thinking, hopes to carry you way too high. Now you're in a position where you can use all that as spiritual juice. You can dream away, you can hope away, you can drown in the sweet soul energy, let's say, because the situation went that way. You can imagine for a mystic, you can imagine for an artist, you can imagine for a person who really needs this relax, chill out energy, the escapism. It's gonna feel like, honey to the soul. This can be so productive in so very creative writing, poetry, uh, flirt, love, just that. Don't drown in the illusion. Let me give you a personal example, even though I don't like to speak about myself, but this is the best possible example for this energy. I like an online multiplayer MMO World of Warcraft type of game, and actual World of Warcraft. And this is where let's pretend we're friends. Let's pretend we flirt with each other. Well, let's pretend we like each other very, very much. And chances are you end up liking the person. You actually kind of have a big crush on the person. And then, but we can't meet because you live on the other side of the world. Don't let something like this know the limits between fantasy. It is all very positive because you would want this, but you know what I mean. Saturn. You can't ignore the Saturnian element. If someone is truly very, very far from you and physical reality makes it such a way that it cannot work, well, then like it or not, a moment will come when the bubble of fantasy will have to be broken and be okay with it. So don't drown like an illusion like me and the other person has, because it can, but at the same time it is karmic, because you want that soul to be present in your life, but that soul can be present just, as a soul. So yeah, this is an example, but you can apply it in any way, shape, and form. But the not so good expression of this energy, don't drown in an illusion, in a lie, or don't expect Nanoretic Neptune, a spiritual expression, to turn into something ridiculously real. You know what I mean? Let's say that you encounter a real spirit, a real ghost. Well, would you ask it to move objects for you? You would be extraordinarily unwise, and you would probably ruin your experience because it would just leave you. You know what I mean? It would not return because it is unwise. You challenge it. It is almost like, let's say you meet a person for the first time. You Let's say you're a boss and you have a new employee, and this is your very, very first. Well, you're not gonna put them to the most hellish and difficult task and job straight away, would you? You know what? You would actually put them to the easiest and most joyful. You know what I mean? So wisdom goes a lot. You would not expect a ghost to play your game. You would approach it with maximum diplomacy, and then you would build a relationship if you want this experience. This is just an example. I'm not saying that this is how, but replace the symbolism of ghost with anything that is Neptunian. Let's say that you're an artist. Your biggest masterpiece is in your head. You figured it out, or it came to you at least in a Gemini way. Well, you will not expect the end result to meet the exact picture in your mind, because would you be wise? You would know that creativity needs Venus needs freedom. That's just it is almost like what you had in your mind. That's like a tadpole. The end result will be the frog. You know what I mean? So, but there is going to be a strong intensity and potentially violence and shocking things that playing out in the world this week. So there's that side to it, but we must detach from the horror and use the best side of this energy, because there is a side of this energy, as I said, which wants to make us healers. Beautiful words. Chiron sextiling Mercury, Mercury Sun Kazemi. The power is in our hands. We can do so much good for ourselves and for other people this week. We can be forces of hope, epitomes, titans of love in other people's lives, especially the most vulnerable. Let me give you an example how this squares can play out in the best possible way. There's a person, they thought that, well, I just lost my hope. Surprise, surprise. Gemini energy. Their situation reaches someone's heart, and that person does something. Hope is restored instantly. This is the sweetest expression. Someone saves you. Someone is your hero. Someone is your healer. But you're also part of this game. You know what I mean? So this is one of those weeks where, even though there's going to be the scary part, power to truly make the best of it and to leave a a crater of benevolence and love and faith and hope in the soul of another person is the opportunity that this week gives us, a very strong spiritual empowerment. So let us use that. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for all the love, all the beautiful words, all the support. And until next time, bye for now.